What's the good word, my nerds? Sarge here, back again, coming at you today to discuss my first impressions of Call of Duty Black Ops 4 multiplayer mode. Today, I'm going to give you my honest thoughts and opinions about the multiplayer mode for Black Ops 4. It's worth noting that I'm the furthest thing from a COD fanboy that you can possibly be. In fact, I've played the last 4 CODs either not at all or for about a total of 2 hours before realizing they were the same garbage as the game before. I really had not enjoyed my time in Call of Duty since Modern Warfare 1 and 2, and to some extent the first 2 Black Ops games. Although the lag in Black Ops 2 was completely game-breaking at times, which probably contributed to my time away from the franchise. But nevertheless, it's safe to say that anything I have good to say about the franchise or this game is not coming from a place where I desperately want COD to be good. In fact, I would probably get a sick pleasure out of watching the game fail and Activision having to answer for all of their shady dealings of the past. But with this game, I just simply can't do that. To my surprise, the multiplayer mode for this game is actually really solid. So to get into my review of the game and to tell you about the things that I like about it, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. You guys got to be thinking at this point, hey Sarge, you know, if you hated the last 4 Call of Duty games so much, how is it that you ended up being interested or purchasing Black Ops 4? Well, to be completely honest with you, I purchased Black Ops 4 as a pre-order just because I wanted the early access to the Blackout mode beta. I was interested in playing that game and having the opportunity to compare and contrast the Call of Duty Battle Royale mode with the other Battle Royales on the market and potentially make some YouTube videos. And what ended up happening was I just got too fucking lazy to actually cancel my pre-order. You know how they make it super difficult to cancel pre-orders for digital downloads. And when I got home on day 1, the game was already pre-installed on my PS4. So at that point I figured, well, what the hell, why not go ahead and play the multiplayer mode and give it a fair shot. And so here we are. I think that the mode is actually pretty solid, as good as any of the Call of Duties that I've seen in a long time. And so I'm going to hop right in now and give you guys my thoughts on some particular mechanics inside of the game that I think make it good. What makes Black Ops 4 multiplayer feel somewhat refreshing and exciting for me is that they were able to keep the familiar feel of COD gunplay that's always been pretty solid, while introducing and revisiting some other elements that give the game that refreshing feel rather than being just another copy and paste of previous titles. The first and most obvious element that has shaped the game this year is the return of having specialist classes. Pre-launch, I was really looking forward to see how this would be implemented. Expanding the list to 10 different specialist classes this year vastly expands the manner in which matches can play out. For example, if both teams have Seraph putting down tac inserts, the match may turn into an all-out war at one point of the map, with both teams spawning close by. But in another match, maybe both teams have Torque creating choke points by blocking different paths. And perhaps in yet a completely another set of circumstances, maybe you have Ajax, Battery, or Firebreak unleashing massive assaults on the B flag. In the past, the map alone would determine the way that every match would play out. A map with a lot of rooftops and windows would always devolve into the same type of match, with players camping those areas and other players trying to get them out of their encampments, either by sneaking up on them or sniping. But now, because of the abilities of the various classes, games on the same map can play out in a multitude of different ways. There is, however, one downside to the system, although I haven't been able to find a clear explanation online at this point. I'm sure one is out there, I just haven't seen it. I had heard and read that each team would only be allowed one of each specialist per match. But this clearly has not been the case, as I'm frequently in games with 2 of the same specialist. So maybe a change has been applied only to certain specialists who would break the game. I, however, would be a big fan of embracing that chaos. I think that it would leave almost infinite possibilities if all 5 or 6 team members could use the same specialist. Or maybe they should just relegate it to a special playlist for that setup. I could see how it would get messy to play against a team of all 6 batteries, making almost an endless stream of explosives. But if they relegated it to just a certain playlist, I think the chaos could be very interesting. The next big addition to the game this year is the self-heal ability. I've heard a lot of hate about this mechanic, but the skill gap dickhead in me kinda likes it. Even though it's a minor addition, it at least adds some element of utility that stronger players can use as an advantage. Knowing when to pop your self-heal or to equip the stim perk so that you can heal on the fly adds at least a small element that weaker players may take some time to master. It's been a while since I can remember a Call of Duty asking players to do anything that a 5-year-old couldn't critically analyze in about 30 seconds. Again, this isn't a huge skill gap addition as it is pretty straightforward, but at least it's something. In a game that hasn't had recoil or ammo management in over a decade now. When you factor in the change to base health as well, moving up this year to 150 and at times 200 if Crashes uses TAC 5 ability, choosing to enter combat after you've taken damage will almost certainly end in death if you haven't self-healed first. So needless to say at this point, I'm a big fan of the new health management mechanics that are in this year's game. I'll cover my last couple positives really quickly as I don't think they are nearly as much of a selling point as what I've just covered. There are plenty of maps upon release for Black Ops 4, and bringing back a few of the previous Black Ops maps was also a great idea. It throws a little nostalgia in the direction of series veterans and keeps things from getting stale too fast. Finally, the score streaks feel somewhat rewarding and are an incentive to play the objective and try to avoid death when you're closing in on a reward. However, I wouldn't say that the score streaks are so impressive that they'll keep you playing the game for long if you don't enjoy the gunplay and specialist abilities. So before I get out of here, I have to at least list a couple things that I don't think are necessarily terrible points of contention, but I would call them minor pitfalls. Even with the addition of specialist classes, the majority of each match, when you're not using your specialist abilities, is the same old for the Call of Duty experience. Thus, it can start to feel old really fast, especially if you're one of those people who doesn't enjoy all the different multiplayer modes. If you're just a TDM hustler, I could see the game getting pretty old pretty fast for you. And of course the final thing that kind of drives me nuts and should drive everybody nuts is the Black Ops Pass. The fact that they're selling you the 12 DLC maps bundled with a bunch of other shit that you don't want for a price of $59 is just an incredible fucking rip-off. It's going to be bad for the community. It's going to separate players from their friends who don't purchase the DLC, and it's going to be bad for the game overall. But I'm not going to spend much time talking about that because you're all aware of it and you've all probably heard of it extensively at this point. So, to wrap things up here, other than that, I think the game is actually really solid. The gunplay, I would say, is as crisp as ever. I haven't experienced any game-breaking lag yet, which is a first for a Call of Duty game. And to reiterate my earlier points, I think the specialist classes and self-heal are welcome additions to the game that, for me anyways, has made it feel somewhat different and refreshing, at least for the first week of gameplay. Granted, a week of gameplay isn't enough time to give a final verdict of the game, but so far, I've had more fun playing this game than I have any of the previous 4 or 5 Call of Duties. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up right there. As always, guys, thanks for taking the time to listen to me ramble. Mash those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already, and keep fighting the good fight, my nerds. Until next time, Sarge out.